welcome to another episode of the Pewtercast. I am Brent Allen, your host. This is our Tour Day Offseason, Episode 3. We're going to be taking a swing through free agents, not the free agents that are out there, but our own free agents. Joining me, as always, my co-host, Ren Daxt. Ren, how you doing tonight, buddy?
I am well. Thanks for asking. How the hell are you?
Not too bad. Not too bad. It's been an interesting last little bit. Got to take the boy to see Marvel Universe live, and he broke my heart a little bit. I'm a big Spider-Man fan, and turns out he is a Hulk fan, which, I mean, so Hulk's pretty cool, but, you know, Spider-Man, you know?
I would say I'm not a big fan of either.
We can no longer be friends.
Okay. See you later. I know, but I get Spidey. I don't get Hulk at all.
Yeah.
People who say Hulk's their favorite superhero, I'm just like, what?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, but he got a Hulk t-shirt and he got a Hulk, like, stuffed plush. Actually, he slept with Hulk that night and, like, used him as a pillow. He's had Hulk beating up his little sister, so Hulk is now in timeout for the next couple of days. So, you know, that's kind of been our life. But Marvel Universe Live was really stinking cool. You know, it was a lot of fun.
Did he blame it on Hulk and not him?
Well, sure he did, because he's 5.
I didn't beat up Sissy. Hulk did.
Exactly. I tried to stop him. I tried to save her, because I'm big and strong. So, well, guys, this, as I mentioned at the top of the show, we are going to be diving into our free agent show. We did this last year. It was a good show. It had a good format to it, Ren. So the title of this show is going to be Love 'Em or Leave 'Em. And essentially what we're going to be doing is we'll be going down through the list of all of our free agents, and we've got, I don't know, about 15, 16, somewhere around there, maybe 18. And some of them we've got some in all the different categories, the unrestricted free agents, the restricted, the exclusive rights free agents. And we're just going to be going through talking about, you know, are these guys that we love that we want to see them come back, or are we just going to leave them and, you know, let them walk? Ren, I believe that this was the show last year where we declared that Chris Conti was going to be gone, and we assigned him a seat on a bus out of town.
We did. It was. And he wasn't the only one. No. I feel like there was somebody else we told to leave and came back.
Yeah, but I don't think we gave anybody else like a seat number on the bus.
No, yeah, he was up. Yeah, we were adamant about it. Like, you know, see you later. Bye-bye. We have Keith Tandy. You're no longer needed.
Uh-huh. And Bradley McDonald, whatever his name is.
Well, he was a free agent. We wanted him back.
Yeah.
But he was actually,
But between those two, it was going to be, you know, we were going to let Chris Conti walk. Now, and, you know, and here I stayed, I've kind of been a little bit of a defender of Chris Conti over this last season. So he is not a free agent, by the way, this year. I think we signed him back to, a 2-year deal, I think it was last year. So he will not be on this list. So not something that we have to worry about this particular year. Other people we won't be worrying about tonight are people who are not free agents, but we might let them walk anyway. People like Chris Baker, or, you know, anyone like that. These are guys that have multi-year contracts that have not expired, but, you know, it's possible we could see them gone after this year anyway. So Doug Martin, he would also fit into that particular category. So with that, Ren, why don't we go ahead and jump into this show? This is actually, I guess, one other note before we get going. You know, we've been saying that we'll go to like an every 2-week type deal, but this is actually going to come out kind of like in our in-between week. So the every 2 weeks is kind of, I guess, we're going to be doing that Buck in the News, where we'll be, you know, that gives us enough time to gather enough news to talk about. Right, and have a show. So that'll be like the every 2-week thing. These shows, and this is kind of part of the, I guess, the tour aspect of places we'll be making stops along the way, I guess. You know, as these things come up at appropriate points through the off season, these will be the ones that kind of hit, you know, on those in between weeks. So a little bit of extra content, I guess, during here at the off season, as we are not going full tilt during this time of the year. So. All right, with that said, Ren, why don't we go ahead and jump into it? Let's go ahead and look at our exclusive rights free agents. Now, the list that I have here is the list that is coming out according to sporttrack.com, or however you say that, the name of that website. So if something is off or you have a different thing, let me know. I actually had to move one of them because they had Pat Murray in as an exclusive rights free agent, but I'm near positive he's an unrestricted free agent now. So I moved him down for that. But if you have anything different on that, let me know. Exclusive rights free agents, Ren, can you explain to us what that means?
No. Yeah. Very basically, it's you play for the Bucs, you don't play for anybody. It's you. Yeah. If the Bucs offer you a contract, you basically have to sign it. And I'm sure there's ways out of it, but the team will still own your rights. Mm-hmm. So it's you sign what they give you, or you don't play unless they trade you or release you. But
or you sit, or you just sit out for the season. Yeah. You don't get paid. So, you don't get paid if you don't do it. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty much the unrestricted free agents. It's like somebody like I think Jaquez Smith was one last year. Jaquez Smith, and because we were all freaking out that he hadn't signed it yet, because everyone signed theirs and he waited like 3 more days, and we're like, when are they gonna sign?
Right.
Because we thought he was going to be an answer to one of the defensive end pass rushing positions, but obviously he wasn't. So yeah, that's the deal. It's like it's almost as good as having them under contract.
All right. Well, those two people, we only have 2 that I have on the list here. The first one, Ren, and I'll throw it out to you first. Are you going to love him or leave him? 1, Peyton Barber.
Yeah, we got to bring it back. I think.
Do you think he did enough? Like, do you think?
Yeah, I think everybody feels that there's going to be massive changes to the running back spot this year. I'm sure we'll get to Doug Martin and Jaquiz Rogers and Peyton Barber. Who am I forget? Oh, Charles Sim. We'll talk about tonight as well, I'm sure. But yeah, as Peyton Barber, as far as optics and eye test. And probably stats as well. He was our most productive running back, especially running between the tackles. So they're gonna extend him a contract. Like I said, I think there's going to be massive upgrades there. So do not pencil him as a day 1 starter, but he'll definitely be on the team.
Yeah, I agree. He did enough to earn another spot on the on the roster, and he'll be back. Now, as far as the other guys, the other free agents or the other guys that you talked about, Doug Martin is not going to be a free agent this year. We have his contract out for the next 4 years, so we either just release him or we trade him or we bring him back. I guess we could also renegotiate his contract would be another deal there, but. For the purposes of this show, Doug Martin actually wouldn't be there. And I believe Jaquiz Rogers, he is also not on this deal because I believe it was last year we actually signed him to a 2-year deal. So he won't be an unrestricted free agent until next season. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't cut him. We have no dead cap money if they do go ahead and cut him. So it doesn't affect us one way or the other, except for if he's on the team or not. So the only 2 guys in the running back crew we'll be talking about this year is Peyton Barber and Charles Smith when we get down to him. But yeah, I'm with you there. All right, one more guy in the exclusive rights free agent category, and that guy is over on the defensive side of the ball, Mr. Javian Elliott. Ren, what do we got with him? We're going to love him or are we going to leave him?
I think he deserves a spot on the 90-man roster. Can never have too many good cornerbacks. And the little bit that he played last year, at least, he showed up, had some flashes there in the nickel slot position. So, I think they'll bring him back. He's hung around the team for 2 years now, so he'll have a spot on the 90-man roster. Yeah,
and you bring up a really good point there of at this point, we're no longer talking about a 53-man roster. We are talking about the 90-man roster. We're talking about who we're going to go into camp with. What we do from there, we'll whittle it down. But, this is really that 90-man roster. And I'm with you on that. Elliott's proven himself to be a serviceable nickel corner. And with the entire cornerback room being a little thin next year, possibly, there's no reason to not have him on the roster when he has played as well as he has, especially for the backup position that he's had. So, yeah, I don't have any problems with that. So, all right, well, that is going to be our exclusive our exclusive rights free agents. Let's move over to our restricted free agents. Now, Ren, what is the difference here between our restricted free agents and our unrestricted free agents?
I should have looked this up exactly what restricted free agents. For some reason, I thought we were just doing unrestricted free agents tonight, which now that I think about it was really dumb. I should have done restricted free agents. But what it is the Buccaneers will offer them a contract. And once again, the Buccaneers own their rights, so they sign it. But a team gets to or can sign the player to another contract. Basically, the Bucs get first right for refusal. And depending on where they were drafted or how much or how big the contract is, this offseason contract is, you get compensated for draft picks if that player decides to sign with another team.
But I believe and I could be wrong on this, like the player can sign with another team, but the team actually has to beat the Buccaneers offer. The Buccaneers can come in and let's say so one of the guys we have on here is Cameron Brate. Say Cameron, they put in whatever the offer is they get on Cameron Brate. Another team's can't come in and just offer him the same amount of money. They actually have to offer him more, and then the Buccaneers can either choose to match that money or they can let him go, but they get the draft pick. Do I understand that right?
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
That sounds about right. Yeah. And I wonder if the player has a choice in it. Buffalo comes knocking for Cameron Brate, and they offer him $500,000 more, and the Bucs are like, okay, see you later. We'll take the second round pick or whatever amount they put on it, and draft pick is allocated to Cam Brate. I wonder if Cam could be like, no, I'll just play for
no, just joking. Yeah.
I want to stay here. I wonder if that's if that option's available.
Well, the weather is certainly better in Tampa than it is in Buffalo. All right. Well, so with this, let's hear what we got. We got 5 guys on this, and I already mentioned him, Cam Brate. I don't know that this one really requires a whole lot of discussion, Ren, but what do you think? We going to love him? We going to leave him?
Of course, we're going to keep him.
Absolutely.
I think the big storyline with Cameron Brate is what kind of contract the Bucs offer, because he was an undrafted free agent. So, if they offer him a minimal contract, which they can because of where he was drafted, but a team can come in and swoop up Cam Brate, who's had 14 touchdowns the past 2 years. Catches pretty much everything you throw in his zip code. So I'm sure he's a hot commodity for a team that's looking for a tight end. So, like I said, the storyline here is going to be how big of a contract the Bucs offer him, and are they going to make it so you have to give a first rounder, a second rounder, a third rounder, if you want Cameron Brate's services, if you want to buy him away from the Buccaneers. So that's going to be the thing. Yes, Cameron Brate will be playing somewhere for sure, but hopefully for us next year.
Yeah, the chess match of what we do with his contract is certainly going to be an interesting thing to see what Jason Light does there. I put down here, I said that I think Jason needs to offer him the highest tender offer that he can put out there on Brate and dare other teams to come and try and take him. But I just like Cameron that much. I don't want to see him go anywhere. So that may be a little ridiculous, but certainly that means that Cam gets a much bigger contract as well.
Yes.
All right. Well, moving on, we have Darius Glanton. Now, he is a linebacker. He actually went out with a pretty serious injury. I don't know how bad his injury is, or if his injury is going to be of the nature that he'll be able to make it back for the next year. But let's assume that he might be back with us next year, Ren, unless you know the answer to that question. And what do you think we're going to do? Are we going to love him, or are we going to leave him?
I do not know the answer to that question. I would assume so, though, because it is a long off season. If I remember correctly, he broke his leg. So
pretty nasty too. It was a pretty clean break, if I remember.
Rehab, taking place there. But I think they like Darius Glanton. I think he's a really good backup. He could probably start at linebacker. for some of these linebacker poor teams. Teams that are looking to upgrade at linebacker, he could be somewhere. He could be starting the NFL, and I think the Bucs are glad they have him. He can play all three positions, and he's a valuable piece. So, yes, unless sort of like talk to who I mentioned earlier, because Smith, where he comes back and he just can't, go. His rehab just didn't. He's just not the same player he was because of his injury. But even before that, I think the Bucs will still at least offer him something, because I feel like he's going to be a sort of a right around when training camp starts addition. Like that's when his rehab's going to be over, and that's when they're going to be able to see where he is. So I think in the meantime, they are going to offer him a contract, not nearly as high as Cam Brate's. So they can have a spot for him in the 90-man roster to see where he is when he comes back from his injury during training camp.
Sure, I'm with you there. And just so you know, I did look it up. Greg Allman reported back on December 19th that he should be able to make a full recovery and play next season. So at least there's that. I don't know how that's going, but as far as we know, that's the prognosis, I guess, was he should be able to return. So I'm with you on that. I'm with you. I remember Darius Glanton was one of the guys. The very first year we did the Pewtercast, had Scott Reynolds on talking about training camp and what he was seeing in training camp. And I asked him, who's kind of the guy that nobody's talking about that you're most excited for? And Darius Glanton was the guy that he named then, sort of this guy that was going to be the backup to the linebacker situation, and Scott was very, very high on him then, and so I've kind of had an eye on Darius Clanton since then myself. All right, another name on this list, Ryan Russell, way up on the defensive line. What do you think? We're going to love him or are we going to leave him?
Yeah. What are we going to do with Ryan Russell? Since there's room for 90 players, I think they are going to offer him a contract. I don't think they're going to. It's not going to be a big one. Probably out of the three, the least. Besides the running back position, I think the defensive line is going to look different. Will be the other different position that the Bucs have that will look. They'll be totally revamped and look totally different from what it did at the end of this season to beginning of next. So I think they like Ryan Russell. I think they like his motor and the way he competes. So I think they will offer him a contract on the 90-man roster, but I would not be shocked if he ends up not making the team because of what I feel. There's going to be lots and lots of new faces in camp this year looking to totally remake that defensive line. Yeah,
you're probably right as far as what the Buccaneers are going to do. But for me personally, I think I'm going to leave him. And here's the deal. You're right. He is a fairly inexpensive option at a position where we have some really great need, but he spent a whole lot of time on the inactives list this season. So even inside of a really messed up defensive line, he's kind of a low man on the totem pole. And I feel like we could use that money elsewhere with some of these other free agents that are out there. Even if they're, I don't want to say streetwalkers, but guys that maybe lower in the totem pole in whatever team they're currently with. So to me, the thing that sticks out with me is just how many. I don't know exactly how many weeks he spent on the inactive list, but it was several. I just remember that from you and I always doing our predictive inactives list. Going through the Buck in the News show. So, I'm going to leave him personally, but it wouldn't surprise me. I think you're right if the Buccaneers do at least put an offer on him and put him out there. So, Ryan Russell. All right, we got one more defensive guy in this list, and then we've got one offensive guy on this list. The last defensive guy is a guy that I got to be honest, Ren, I didn't actually know that he was still technically with the team. I saw this name. I had to go look it up just to verify it, and sure enough, he is currently signed with the Buccaneers. Jude Ajayi-Barima. What do you think about him?
Yeah, he's been rehabbing his knee. Like, I follow him on Instagram, and he's on Instagram like 2-3 times a day. It's either a picture of his dashboard while he's driving with music playing or him working out, or him like he'll be in Houston one day at some place, and they're messing with his knee and seeing how his progress is going, and then the next day you'll see him at one Buck, like you'll see him out on the field and doing a little bit of training. But he's moving now. He's doing some drills, like the ladder drill, sort of that box you lay out with box rope that you lay out on the ground and step in the squares as fast as you can. I saw him doing some of that stuff. So it looks like he's making a good recovery. And just like JV and Elliott, how we talked about earlier, Jude was, sort of I guess he was the starting nickel before he got hurt. And it was going to be a good competition this year between him, JV and Elliott, and Bobby McLean. So once again, I think a lot of these players, the conversation would be different if we're talking about a 53-man roster. But as far as a 90-man, I think that I think he deserves a shot to see what he can do and see how far he's come after that knee injury.
Yeah, for the restricted free agent section, I'm with you on that. Put in an offer. I certainly wouldn't make it too high of an offer, though. I think it gets that asterisk. Like, Cam Brate's a guy that just said, to me says, do what we got to do to keep him on the team. Jude Ajayi-Barima, especially Ryan Russell, it's give him something. Let's see what happens. But if somebody else comes knocking, fine. My only thing with Jude Ajayi-Barima is being the fact that he's coming off of a pretty serious injury. And wasn't this an injury from like 2 seasons ago? Because I don't know that he played last year a lot, did he?
No, he got injured in training camp.
This year? Okay.
If I remember correctly. It might even been OTAs. It was really early. Like, that was sort of the discussion was, okay, and I think that's why they went and got Bobby Mack, now that I think about it, is once Jude went down, then there's JV, and they're like, okay, we need to build some competition, a little depth here, and that's when they went out and got Bobby McLean.
Gotcha. Yeah. But either way, coming off a pretty serious injury, cornerback's one of those. I'm calling it a position of need. Without knowing what's happening with Brent Grimes, especially, and with Vernon Hargraves coming off of an injury, and also being a big question mark as to how he's going to be able to play and handle the position. That's a lot of people, and I certainly don't want to be depending upon those guys, kind of like we did at the defensive end position this past year, and it came back to bite us, depending on a couple of guys that were coming off of injury. Though certainly they weren't the only guys that we had in the defensive end room, but still. So that's the only thing that really makes me kind of nervous about Jude Ajayi-Barima. But, being able to get somebody else who is a known person with maybe a recent track record to help bolster that secondary, I'd be a fan of that. But, as you say, on a 90-man roster, especially as a restricted free agent where you can make an offer, and if somebody else does something better, they can come get them. Yeah, that's fine. I'm with you on that. I could see that. All right. And the last guy in our restricted free agent section is another offensive guy, Adam Humphries. We going to love him or we going to leave him?
I think he's once again earned a spot. I don't know if we really have a better slot receiver, unless if they want to this offseason or training camp OTAs get Chris Godwin in there because he needs to see some more playing time, or even maybe slide Djax inside a little more. But even if he's not a 3 receiver, I like him as a 4. So yeah, I would expect probably, besides of all the people we've talked about, besides Cameron Brate, I think Adam Humphries will get, the largest tenure, as in if someone comes a knocking, it's going to cost them the second most if they want to come grab Adam Humphries.
See, that's the thing. I certainly have Adam Humphries down as a love him kind of guy. And you're right. He's been too good for the Bucs to not at least try to retain him. But, you mentioned Chris Godwin, and with the rise of Chris Godwin, and I know, he's been, I think that was what we learned something about him this year was they've kind of been training him at all the different spots. They're certainly focusing on kind of more of that number one wide receiver position. But he's, I guess, been cross-training, I guess, a little bit. So to me, with Mike Evans and Deshaun Jackson, who is on this team, he's not a free agent, and I don't think he's going anywhere. And Chris Godwin, to me, I just find it a little harder to justify a high tender offer on him. And I just make it easy seeing another team swooping in to offer him more.
Right. I didn't say a high tender. I said second highest.
Sure. Fair enough. And out of these guys, yeah, because, I mean, yeah, if you had to rank them between Cam Brate, Adam Humphries, Ryan Russell, Judah J. Breeman, and Darius Clanton, sure, I could go with you on that. He'd be the second highest. Right. My point just being, I still don't think it's going to be a high offer. Now, I could be wrong about that. I hope I'm wrong. I'd love to see Adam stay. And while I'm going to love him, I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised if he winds up leaving to go somewhere else.
Someone snipes him.
Mm-hmm. Wouldn't surprise me. And I don't know that we would come up and match the offer, depending on how much Adam could command, out there in the free agent world. So
right. Especially when you have someone like we said, Chris Godwin, who, they have to carve out some type of playing time to get this guy on the field more.
Sure. And, and you could argue that a big problem that the Buccaneers had on offense in the 2017 season was the idea of, getting people enough reps out on the field. So, yeah. All right. Well, that is it for our exclusive rights free agents, our restricted free agents, and finally up, and certainly it is the biggest list of the night, is our unrestricted free agents. Now, this one's pretty easy. These guys are fully unrestricted. They can go anywhere. They can sign anywhere with any team for any amount of money. Nobody gets any compensation. And that includes the Buccaneers. They could come back to the Buccaneers, but they're free to go anywhere they want. So with that, the first guy that I have on the list here is Patrick Murray. Love him or leave him, Ren?
Love him. I think we should bring in competition for him. He did have a rough end of the season. I believe he missed a kick in 3 games in a row, 2 for sure. And they both were pretty big. Yeah, he should have competition, but he's definitely the best kicker we've had past 2 years. So we already kicked him out of the door once.
Right.
don't want to do it again. But I think there should be competition for him. But so it's a love him for Patrick Murray.
So do you think it should be like legit competition, or is it like, no, let's just bring in somebody else to, have another guy around, but it's really going to be Pat Murray? Or do you think it really should be like legit competition?
It depends on who's out there. I really don't know if there is going to be veteran legit competition out there. But, there was a couple of rookie kickers that came in and played really well this year. Philly has one. I think the Bengals have one. Mm-hmm. Those guys did really well. And so there's going to be a new crop of guys that come in. And as we know, normally they don't really get drafted that high or at all. Mm-hmm. And, they're invited to camp as undrafted free agents. So I think it doesn't matter who it is. I think that it will be legit competition. You could bring you bring in Ryan Fitzpatrick, we know he's a backup, sure. That's not legit competition. You bring in, when you brought in Deshaun Jackson, that wasn't, Deshaun Jackson taking a wide receiver number 1, even though they move around spots, but you know what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. If they bring in two safeties, let's say they bring in like 2 free agent safeties, or bring in one and draft one. Those guys, those guys are sort of battling each other because one of them is going to be Justin Evans, no matter what. So, right. I think the competition they bring in for the kicker will be legit. It's just, I just do. With kickers, it just is, because it's such a unique skill set that I don't want to say everybody can do it, but once you learn how, it's not really athletic ability. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You don't really get protection as a kicker like as you do as a quarterback. There's no tenure. It's if the guy kicks better than you and it's obvious, they're probably going to go with the other guy. So I think all competition for a kicker in training camp is legit.
Fair enough, and I'm with you on that. Obviously, we're going to love them. I got a feeling that a lot of these guys are going to be fairly obvious as to whether or not we love them or leave them. I don't know. There might be a few that surprise us as we get down through the list. Ren, you mentioned safety just a minute ago, so let's go over and let's talk about a safety. TJ Ward. I know everybody's on the edge of their seat waiting to hear, what we're going to predict here, but what do you think? Love him or leave him?
One of the free agents, one of the 2017 massive disappointments as free agents was TJ Ward. It didn't take long for Buck fans to realize why Denver just let him go. And then pile on, he got busted for pot, and then that was like during the season. And then just didn't show up to his court date after the season. It was just, and then there was one part where, he was popping off in the locker room at one point. I wasn't brought in here to be a part-time player. I'm here to start. I win, that type of stuff.
Which, by the way, he was still saying that this past week.
Was he?
He was. So TJ Ward was on Barstool Radio on Sirius XM, and he was interviewed by, I guess, Stephen Che of Che Says, who does a lot of the video work that we see on Bucs Twitter. He works for Barstool Radio, and I guess he sort of sauntered into the studio while they were talking to TJ Ward, and there was a whole segment that was basically Stephen Che like saying, hey, so here's this film and this play where you screwed up, and here's this play and this film where you screwed up, and what do you think about all these things? And basically he was kind of saying the same thing. He's saying, listen, I'm a Super Bowl winning 2-time Pro Bowl safety, but I was in rotation with a rookie and another safety, talking about Chris Conte, who has no accolades. And basically, like, he felt as if he had a leash on him, and, he just wasn't, he says he wasn't a good fit. It just wasn't a good fit here. And, they asked him if he was going to be back. He's like, well, I don't know if the Bucs want me back, and honestly, I don't know if I want to be back, was his words. So, I think it's going to be a leave him. In fact, I'm pretty sure of it. I think it's going to be a leave him. And even if we don't leave him, I don't think he's going to want to come back either. And
you got to start convincing guys who were disappointments to, well, if, I don't have a job right now, but if those guys offer me a job, maybe I'll take it. It's like, get out of town, buddy.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And actually, Stephen actually asked him about Cutter and Smith, if he thought that they were good coaches, if they should have been brought back. And his answer was, well, what was the record this year?
Yeah.
And then he later backed on and was like, no, look, they're good coaches. They're good coaches, blah, 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 blah. But, he's just not a guy that he's not the right type of guy to be around here, and maybe he still thinks a little bit more highly of himself than what he's actually doing and what he's actually able to do. And I'm just not interested in that, to tell you the truth. But with that, let's talk about somebody else who is also back there in the secondary. And we've already talked about him just a little bit, but just for the official part of the record, Brent Grimes, love him or leave him?
This one would have been a no-brainer at the end of the season. Now, the Bucs have made their sales pitch to him.
Mm-hmm. So we know the Bucs do want him back.
Yeah. We know. Cutter said so in the press conference, and Brent said so on his last day at $1 this year. He made $6.7 million last year. Mm-hmm. So you think you'd have to get a raise, probably bump it up to 7.5, 8, something like that. But the website that I use for free agent rankings and who's out there and all that has Brent Grimes as the 18th best corner that is a free agent. Now, this takes in restricted free agents as well, so it's not just unrestricted free agents, but has him the 18th. So at first you'd be like, yes, we need Brent Grimes back, but it's not like he's a top 5 free agent. Not only a top 5 corner, he's not even a top 5 free agent corner. Now, if he was like 7 or 8, maybe you could argue about it, but 18th? But to be fair, I don't know how much they knock off sort of his ranking because of his age. Sure. I don't know how much that plays into it, how much, that's, a minus in the minus category for him. But having said all that, and you see what happens when you bring in guys, just pointing to TJ Ward, who hasn't played for an organization yet, and you're not exactly sure how they're going to mesh or it's going to be a good fit. As far as the 90-man roster, I would definitely like to see Brent Grimes back, and it should be pretty soon. I expect probably a week or two after the Super Bowl he's going to give the answer if he's going to come back or he's going to retire. Yeah,
it certainly seems like it's going to be a case of he's either going to retire or he's going to come back. I don't get the feeling that he's out there looking around, though they certainly could be. I mean, he could have his agent doing that for him certainly right now. If his agent was any good, he'd be looking. But I'm with you on that. I love him. The caveat I would give here is I'd say don't mortgage the future with a contract for this guy. Like don't break the bank, but figure out a way to pay him. What we need to in order to get him back for 2018. The other thought I had about this is for as much crap as people give Mike Smith, Grimes really seems to like him a lot. And the fact that Mike Smith is staying could be a big part of Grimes deciding whether or not to stay or go, meaning specifically to stay. If Grimes were to come back, would be a little bit because of Mike Smith being back, which, I think just goes to speak to a credit for Mike Smith, even given the trouble that we had in this past season. So, but I'm with you. Absolutely. We love him. We're going to do that. So, moving off of that, let's jump over to the other side of the ball for a little bit. How about Evan Smith? Love him or leave him?
This is a tough one. He didn't have a consistent year this year. That rotation at guard with Kevin Pamphee.
Kevon Pamphee.
Kevon Pamphee. It was hard to watch and, of course, extremely head-scratching. And the reason they gave for it is, they're both playing well. They both deserve to play. I just, I think that's a pretty lame reason. But with his versatility to be able to play 2 positions and one of them being center, I think he should be on the 90-man roster. He doesn't cost that much money. He was $3.5 million. I would expect for him not to get, a huge raise, even if at all. But he once again, he knows the system. He's been in it for since Dirk Cutter's been here. I don't like him as a starter, but I like his versatility and his experience as a backup, and I think the Bucs do too. So if he doesn't pull a TJ Ward and, think that he is the player he was 5 years ago, when he's winning Super Bowls and going to Pro Bowls, which he hasn't done either, I don't think. I would offer him a contract for the 90-man roster as a depth player.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna disagree with you on here. I'm gonna leave him, and just a full-on, flat-out leave him. Now, with that being said, I will say this: 2 years ago, I said and I believed that this roster was better with him on the team than not, but specifically as a backup. I don't feel that way about him in 2017, and I certainly don't feel that way about him going in 2018. I feel like he was more of a hindrance. And to go off of what you were talking about there, of that whole they've both earned playing time, which is why we had them rotating. I'll tell you what I've kind of always suspected. Now I have nothing to back this up other than just gut feeling. But this
is your theory.
This is my theory. This is 100% my theory. Is that either his agent or he himself kind of sat back and said, "Hey, look, this is my last year with this team. My contract is up, and I am not going to be able to get another contract if I'm still here as a backup and just being a backup. So, I've been playing well. I played well for you last year. Let's get him more of some playing time, because certainly there's that piece of, they didn't pay him. What was his contract? $14.5 million or something like that to come here and be a backup. He's making a lot of money as a backup, and I don't know, maybe even if that's Jason Light kind of saying, "Hey, we're paying him a lot of money. We need to use him more." And so, I feel like this was more of I don't want to say political, but more of a appeasement thing, having that rotating guard thing. I don't buy at all. They've both earned playing time. And so, to me, I feel like it was done for the reason of allowing Evan Smith to get a contract somewhere else, of letting him put some more, game film out there. And it may not have actually helped his case. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't, I don't know. But that's just my guess. And I just don't feel like we're going to bring him back. I don't feel like we should bring him back, even on the 90-man roster. I think the other people that we have at offensive line in depth, I'm fine with in letting him go. And I don't know what the minimum pay that we would have to pay him for his status as a veteran, because he's going to be like, what, a ninth-year player in the league or something like that. Ninth or 10th year player, right? So, there will be a minimum that they have to pay him anyway, just because of that status. That's how we wound up getting Garrison Sanborn, I think it was. It's just because of the minimum. To me, it's not worth it. We've got other people there, so I'm going to leave him.
That is the dumbest theory I've ever heard.
Okay.
You're trying to tell me that the Buccaneers were doing Evan Smith a solid so he could go get a job not with their team the next year? That's your theory.
Now that you put it that way, it does sound pretty stupid.
It does sound pretty stupid.
My is not so much so that he could go get a job somewhere else, but so much that it was a, hey, we're not paying him this much money to be a backup. And
now that I can get behind, because Dirk Cutter, for some reason, if you're on the active roster, you have to play. Like, I don't get it. Like, Jaquiz, shouldn't be running back kickoffs. Adam Humphries, which I sort of get, because he'll catch the ball, and I think Dirk Cutter doesn't really care about punt return yardage. He just wants the ball so his offense can get out there. But sort of running those jet sweeps of Bernard Reedy at the beginning of the year when you have Deshaun Jackson, it's just like it's and then bringing in Jaquiz Smith for like 2 or 3 run plays a game. It's like, why? It's like you don't. These aren't your best players. Why are you wasting touches with these guys? And he does do that, and that drives me crazy. That's probably my biggest pet peeve with Cutter. It's like, oh, you're on the 43-man roster? Where are you going to play today? Well, you don't have to. You don't have to. So I could see that, where he felt that, that he's on the 43-man roster and he's there at practice every day and he works hard, so he deserves a chance to get in there and show what he can do. I get that. I think that's a little bit closer to the truth than a hey, buddy, we're going to put you in for half the season so you can get a job next year, not with our team.
Yeah, and yes, and yeah, but certainly, I mean, if you're coming from Evan Smith's camp, from whether you're him himself or his manager, that's got to be a part of a motivating factor for kind of making us think about it a little bit. You know what I mean?
Give a shit what the fucking agent says. Sorry. That's like being a high school coach, and my son needs to go out there and play. Get out of my face! Like, this isn't Little League anymore.
Well,
lady.
No, but you play. No. See, but that's being the irritating parent. You play the, you play the card. You pull the strings of, you just mentioned to somebody, hey, listen, you're paying them $4.5 million this year to be a backup. Really? And you let that.
I guess he should play better then, because he's not starting.
I agree, wholeheartedly agree.
I just don't think you have anything to stand on.
No, I said I didn't have anything to stand on. It was just a gut feeling.
All right.
So, but yes, I think the bigger piece of it more is just we didn't pay him this much money to come be a backup, and I do feel like there's a little bit of he's got to put some film out there to see what we're going to do with him next, or what somebody else might do with him next, or whatever. But it's more about we just didn't pay him to do that, to be a backup, for those reasons. So with that, speaking of backups, let's move on and talk about another backup on the roster, Ren.
Sure.
Ryan Fitzpatrick. Love him or leave him?
Well, since Ryan Fitzpatrick's agent went to Dirk Cutter and said, hey, look at all this money you're paying him, he should get to play at least 3 games this year. That's why I don't think Jameis's shoulder was actually ever hurt.
Really?
They just want to put film out there.
Breaking news. For
Ryan Fitzpatrick to be able to get a job with another team next year.
Breaking news. Ren is a smartass.
$3 million is not a lot of money to pay for a backup quarterback. It sounds like it is, but it's not.
Well, how much are the Bears paying for their backup quarterback?
Oh God, I don't
know.
For
our old backup quarterback.
I don't even know. I really liked Fitzpatrick's calming influence on Jameis Winston, and I think you really saw that once he, did miss those 3 games, and watched Ryan Fitzpatrick lead the offense, and I think it rubbed off on him. We've talked about how, he sort of giving Jameis just not necessarily football pointers, just kind of like life pointers, like, hey, that rhyme was probably a little, I liked it, but it was probably a little too long, and then talking about where to find the hot dogs and that kind of stuff. So I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is very good for Jameis Winston. Now, here's the question. If the Bucs are going to carry 3 quarterbacks, which they said beginning of training camp last year they did not want to. They wanted to carry 2, but Ryan Griffin got hurt in preseason. And but do I like Ryan Fitzpatrick's calming influence over the potential upside and trade value of Ryan Griffin? Yeah, I don't. No, I don't. So that's a tough one for me.
Yeah, because we're going to be talking about like a 36-year-old, 14-year journeyman.
What we're really talking about is like another QB coach, another set of eyes, another voice that gets to talk to Jameis, who knows what he's talking about. And then if Jameis goes down, can come in and win some games.
Sure.
I mean, that's really what we're talking about. It's. But do I want to mortgage that and just get rid of Ryan Griffin and end up releasing him at the training camp because Ryan Fitzpatrick beats him out because we need our Gandalf for our fellowship? I don't. And I don't know. That's a tough one for me. But as a 90-man roster sits, yes, I would like to see him back.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And it's one of those, if we can get him back, bring him back. I think he's good for Jameis. I think he's good for the team. The question is just going to be for how much money, and is anyone else going to come knocking? I don't know enough what other quarterback needy teams are out there that are going to be vying for Ryan Fitzpatrick and his services.
That's a good point.
So, potentially we could get him for cheap again. The contract he came off with the Jets, I think was like what, $12 million, and he came to us for $3 million. Oh, that's a little bit of a dip. But
you can live on it.
You might have to stop going out to eat every once in a while, tighten the belt a little bit. But yeah, $3 million. It's livable.
Only off the dollar menu tonight, kids.
Right. We're not supersizing. We're on a budget. She should be anyway. Anyway, yeah, I agree with that. All right. From Ryan Fitzpatrick, let's move back over to the defensive side of the ball. In Mr. Clinton McDonald, he is up once again for his free agency. What do you think? Do we love him or leave him?
I like him. Love him. great locker room guy. He's up for the NFL Man of the Year. Apparently, you've heard many people come out this year and say when Clinton McDonald talks, everyone sort of stop what they're doing, listen to what he has to say, which I think is very important. That makes him a leader. And of all the defensive linemen this year, I think he played second best behind Gerald McCoy.
I would agree.
So, I know we're looking to Bucs. Me and Jason Light are looking to revamp the defensive line. Bucs fans are looking for a total revamp. At least most of us, I think, are looking for a total revamp of that defensive line. But I think Clinton McDonald, especially for $3 million a year, maybe give him a little bump, but he's not going to be exorbitant amount of money. He's 31 years old, and give him a 3-year deal, and let him be that rotational player and a leader in the locker room and the community. I want to keep him.
100% with you. When Clinton speaks, everybody listens. And here's the thing too. We talk a little bit. Jason at least has talked a little bit about keeping your own guys in house.
Right.
Over the last 4 years, Clinton McDonald has become one of our guys, and I think he is a guy to keep in house. And certainly we'll I'm with it. Love him. Make him another offer. Maybe not quite a 4-year offer. Maybe make it a 2-year offer. Let's see what happens. And we'll look at him again here in a couple years. But yeah, for right now, absolutely, I'd say bring him back. He's one of the more steady people in an otherwise unsteady situation for sure.
Make it a 4-year deal, front load it. So when he turns 34, you could just, last year, you'd be like, okay, thank you.
Could do it that way.
Thank you for your service.
Sure. If he doesn't retire before then, which he might. All right. Well, with that, let's move on. Another one that there's probably going to be a little bit of a debate on, Ren. So, get your cleats out, dig in your heels on this one. We're looking at Nick Folk. Love him or leave him.
I wonder if you're going to skip that. Yeah, apparently, when he was cut, but if you're cut and you're injured, you're not technically released from the team until that injury's healed. Remember that sort of thing? Nick Folk was still sort of on the team type of deal. So I guess that's why he's sort of on this list. He's a non-factor. Just disappointing. Just another disappointing free agent pickup. But I guess he did what he was supposed to do, which was get Roberto Aguayo out of town. And he did do that.
Rather effectively, some might say.
Yeah, and then, maybe he just rested on his laurels and thought he had it made. Of course he didn't, but that's more of sort of a movie plot. Now that I've done my job, I'll just kick back and relax. No, we all know what happened. He got the yips and he's gone. So yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, I got love him or I got leave him. Period. Done.
Everybody knows why.
Right.
Next player,
Silver Salinga, and I've finally learned how to say his name properly. So let's see what we think. Where are we going to go? Love him or leave him?
Silver Salinga.
I
know. I guess what? Does IGA make an N name?
It does. It on that roster card that they give you when you walk into the stadium. The pronunciation guide is very clear. It's IL or LING. Silver Salinga.
LING.
Yeah. Salinga. So I guess in whatever place he comes from, that makes an NG sound.
Okay. He's not that expensive. I don't think anybody's going to come after him. Everyone put on weight on the interior of the defensive line. I think everyone put on weight no matter what. It seemed to be a big thing. McCoy put on weight. McDonald put on weight. We got big fat Chris Baker. We already had big fat Silver Salinga. We drafted big fat Stevie Tui Kolovatu. I don't know if Harris put on weight or not. But I know McCoy did. I know Golston did. So the point being is that for a rotational player and the price that he has, I think they'll offer him a contract and bring him back. Especially, since these big, wide-bodied defensive tackle / nose guards are, they're not easy to find. Apparently, they're in high demand. So I think they bring him in for the 90-man roster. But I would not be surprised if he doesn't end up making the team at all.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Love him, but love him cheaply.
Yeah,
I think is what I got here. And again, I feel a lot about him like I feel about Ryan Russell. The sheer amount of time that he spent on the inactives list this year. In a weak position. Yeah, I mean,
had weak depth.
Yeah. So, and listen, we do have a pretty major overhaul to do on our defensive line, and there is the idea you can't do it all in 1 year, can you? You're going to need some depth. So get a guy who's familiar with your system, or a couple guys familiar with your system, and you get them on the cheap. But just understanding they're probably going to spend a lot of time on the inactive list. That would be my only thing. I'd say love him, but love him cheaply. So another guy, Ren, and I'll go ahead and spoil it. I've got him also as a love him, but love him cheaply. But I'd be interested to know what we think the Bucs are going to do and what you think we should do. Keith Tandy.
Is there any more head-scratching player than Keith Tandy? We were all sold, okay, here we go. Tandy's gonna be one of our starting safeties based on the end of the end of the 16 season. Had a bunch of picks, 4 and 5 games or 5 and 4 games or something crazy, and he couldn't get on the field. And people were sort of scratching their heads. And then I brought up the point. Well, this is his third defensive coordinator, and he hasn't been able to get on the field for any of them. Sometimes a guy's not a system fit, or maybe, let's flat out the defensive coordinator just doesn't like the guy, doesn't like your attitude, doesn't like the way you play, doesn't like the way you practice, and sort of puts you in the doghouse and buries you on the bench. None of that has been a problem with Keith Tandy, and this is his third defensive coordinator, and he still can't crack the starting lineup when he had a, all-pro little 5-6 game stretch there at the end of the 16 season. So I think they like him. I think they like his work ethic. Once again, if this was a 43-man roster, I honestly don't think he would make the team. But as far as a 90-man roster and compete for a spot in training camp, he made less than $1 million last year. Knows the system once again. I think he comes back.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like I said, love him, but love him cheaply. He didn't do anything for us but be a depth player. I mean, he was out there, and I can handle that if that's what he's going to be. But I'm certainly not hanging, the hopes of our safety position on him. And it does make you wonder. I mean, he did come out. He played fairly well, like we said, at the end of that year. Just didn't get much from him after that. So, all right, Ren, well, we are going to move on from there. Let us go over to Mr. Garrison Sanborn, our long snapper. Love him or leave him?
Keep him. It's one of those positions that you don't think about until you have somebody that can't do it. He's been doing it for 9-10 years. Remember when DePaula got folded up last year, and I believe Darius Glanton was snapping, and we had one blocked at the end of the year because it went right through his gap where he was. If you've heard Patrick Murray talk about how they have to get it off in under 2.5 seconds or it's going to be blocked, all that works in unison. Obviously, Garrett Sanborn's good at it. He's if you hang around that long making that much money, which is $900,000, to basically be on the field for 10 plays, 11 plays, extra points and field goals and punts. You're doing pretty good. And like you said earlier, the Bills just didn't want to pay him the money for a long snapper.
Right.
But if you got somebody, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The Bucs can afford it. So I think it's a good idea if they bring it back.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, and exactly to what you said there. The Bucs can't afford it. Yeah, I'm not just going to risk it with a new guy who's out of college who's cheaper. And that's really one of those. I mean, that's really one of those positions you either do it or you don't.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's no varying degrees as to how well you do it. It's just you either do or you don't. So it's really just a matter of how much are we going to pay you to do it. So there's no reason to move away from him, as far as I can tell. All right, so moving on, Justin Tratu.
Yeah, I don't even know this guy. Yes. I don't even remember anything about him.
Mm-hmm. My note on him was who?
Yeah,
he was a guy we signed back during the offseason or during training camp. He got hurt in training camp. He's been on IR the entire year. I don't even know what position he plays. I didn't even look it up.
He's been on IR the entire year?
Yeah.
So he went undrafted in 2011. Went to
Defensive
Florida.
End. Yeah.
I shouldn't know he is. I'm just going to go ahead and say leave him because I haven't left anybody yet.
Mm-hmm. Got to do somebody. Yeah.
I haven't left anybody yet. I don't think that, he's 29 years old. He went undrafted. I've never heard of him before. Obviously, he's one of those guys sort of bounces around from practice squad to practice squad. Enough talent to hang around, an organization for a year or a half a year. But when push comes to shove, you got to be pretty injury decimated to get someone, for him to even get up on the 46-man roster. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think they let him walk. And if they ever need him back, I fully expect him to be there, sort of, what do you call them, streetwalkers? Mm-hmm. Walking the street, and so they'll be able to find him. They bring in defensive ends like all the time.
Sure.
There's always some type of rotation of defensive end on the practice squad, and
mm-hmm.
yeah,
and that's not just Tampa. I mean, that's every team, right? Or at least I assume that's every team. I don't know.
It seems that like Tampa always has linemen, offensive, defensively, and safeties and corners. Like that's who they keep.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't really keep a lot of. They used to keep running backs, but since they had 4 mm-hmm. on the 43-man roster, or at least on the 53-man, I should say. I say 40. It's supposed to be 46. On the 53-man roster, they always had 4, and usually 4 were active. Mm-hmm. So they didn't keep a lot on the practice squad. But the Bucs past couple years that I've been following it closely, it's like defensive linemen, offensive linemen, safeties, and corners. Like that's what they're. There's not really a lot of linebackers or wide receivers or. I guess there's not really much left. Tight ends. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Yeah, I'm with you. I let him go. I have no problems. There's a little bit that could be said for bring him back for the 9-man deal.
Right.
Let him see what you do. But, yeah.
If he makes your team, we're in trouble.
Yeah, right. So, and honestly, I'd rather see us use that money to somebody else and see if they really, a big surprise, maybe another undrafted free agent who's out there. Because those are the kind of guys that turn out to be surprises, like pleasant surprises for you. Mm-hmm. You don't expect them to do much, but, if they do, then cool. Trutau's been in the league for 6-7 years. Obviously he's never really become a full-time starter anywhere, which means he's not likely to at this point either. So,
yep.
All right, well, moving on to another guy that we really don't know a ton about, Ren. Adam Geddes, love him or leave him.
Yeah, he was the one the Bucs brought in when they put the 3 offensive linemen, mm-hmm. on IR. When Alley and Sweezy and Dot all went on IR, this is one mm-hmm. of the guys they brought in. He actually made it up to the roster, mm-hmm. but he never got active. He made it to the 53-man,
but never made it active. I think is when we had him. So
what's that?
I think it was just for the last 2 weeks we had him.
Yeah. When they put Sweezy and Marpet. Like I said, on IR, that's when he sort of started popping up. And he never made the active list. I think there's going to be better choices out there for us as far mm-hmm. as the 90-man goes. And if he didn't even make it dressed when you're down to your. Let's see. You have your 5 linemen. 3 of them were down, so you add 3 more. That's 8, and then you usually have 2 or 3 actives. That makes 9, 10, possibly 11. Mm-hmm. Now you're like so what? You're at the 11th or the 12th best lineman on the team.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the future looks too bright for Adam Geddes. He's a guard, here for the Bucs.
Yeah, I'm with you. I am with you. And, a lack of knowledge for the team, right? Like, I suppose that's a little bit of what training camp could be about. Could he be somebody who works his way into that 9-man spot? Honestly, probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not. All right. Back to maybe a more familiar name this year, Ren. Bobby McLean.
Bobby Mack.
Love him or leave him?
For the price, I'm going to go with something like you said. Love him, but not too expensively. He only made $775,000 last year, and I think we need competition at the slot spot. But again, once that determines a lot on what they're going to do with Vernon Hargreaves, if they go into camp, just training camp, going, "Hey, Vernon, you're going to play nickel slot," then I think Bobby would be there for ninth depth, but that'd be a nice, a 4-way battle for, Vernon and Bobby Mack and Javian and Judah J. So
sure.
I say, once again, love him, but for not too much. But if you held a gun to my head, I expect him to be on the 90-man roster if he doesn't sign with somewhere else for more money.
Sure. I'm 100% in agreement with you there. Love him, bring him back. Let him battle it out through camp. I was pleasantly surprised that he won his battles in camp this year to get where he needs to be. And, with the question marks of Brent Grimes, certainly Vernon Hargreaves, Javian Elliott, we already talked about him a little bit earlier. Ryan Smith is, I guess, the only cornerback. Maybe Josh Robinson, though he technically was moved over to safety. There's just not a lot of depth there right now. So I have no problem bringing Bobby back, and certainly let him battle it out. If Brent does retire, we don't have a new stud cornerback. Presumably, I think it'd be Bobby McLean that gets over there. I think that's what we saw happen when Brent was down with an injury this past year. So, at least there's a little bit of familiarity there. And hopefully that doesn't happen this year. So hopefully we get somebody who's a little bit more studly, I guess we should say.
Talented.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we just have a couple of more. Let's stay on the defensive side. Mr. Will Clark. Are we going to love him? Or are we going to leave him?
The Bucs seem to like him. They keep bringing this guy back. So I expect him to be on the 90-man roster. Once again, he's not that expensive. He's less than $700,000. But I know I feel like I sound like a broken record, but if this was like the 53-man roster, I don't think he'd be on it. But we expanded to 90 for OTAs and training camp. I think he's familiar with the defense, and he's made some plays. He made some splash plays. He's had some sacks. So
yeah. And there weren't many to go around for the Bucs this year. So
what's that?
So then there wasn't really that many to go around for the Bucs this year, and he got a couple of them. So
right. But hopefully these players, like we've talked about, like Clark and Tratow, and who was the restricted Ryan Russell. Hopefully, this defensive line gets upgraded to the point where having those type of players on your 53-man roster will become sort of laughable.
Sure, I get that. Yep, and I'm there with you. Will did enough to be brought back, to warrant bringing him back. But let him battle it out in camp. Let's see what happens. And leave it there, leave it on the field. So, all right, back over to the offensive side of the ball. Guy we have talked a little bit about, but not too much, Mr. Charles Sims, rounding out that running back room. What do you think? Do we love him or do we leave him?
I want him back. I think that for what he is a third down back, out of the backfield catching passes, check down guy. He picks up the blitz well. Get him in space. He always makes the first guy miss. I like him. He's 27 years old and only made $768,000 last year. If you give him a $300,000 raise, it's still a bargain for a third down running back. And I think he's good at what he does. He's only 27. So, he's not going to fall off the quote unquote, not mysterious cliff. What is it? It's not figurative. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. When running backs hit 30 years old, it's like someone took out their batteries. They just don't work anymore. Right. So, I would like to see Charles Sims back. Now, I think the only reason he may not be back is sort of kind of what happened to Bragg McDougal last year, which somebody just comes and outbids him. I think the Bucs want him back. I think Dirk Cutter likes him. I think Jason Light likes him. But I'm sure they have a number set in their head as far as they'll pay him. And somebody might come in with a lot of cap space that, is looking for that third down guy, just might pay him more money.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I love him. If you were to have asked me this roundabout, say, week 11, maybe week 12, I'd be like, leave him. I'm okay. He's not doing much for me this year. He's not been that special guy. And, I'm okay to let him go. But I thought he had a really good stretch there down towards the end of the season where he looked a lot like his old self. And, maybe a little bit of when he had a good first down back to run with, So, with Doug Martin being out and potentially Jacquizz being out, I'm going to love him. And, remember what we said about keeping your own guy in-house? And as you mentioned, we don't need to pay him a ton of money. Let's love him. Let's love him. I'm not even going to say cheaply. I say, let's just love him fairly, that's Charles Sims. I wouldn't be surprised to see him back. I wouldn't be surprised to see him gone either way.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But I don't, if he's gone, I don't think it's a reason. I think the reason's not going to be like, the Bucs didn't want him back, sort of showing him the door. It's going to be like a Russell Shepard situation. Right.
And I still say for $1.3 million, I could be a fan of another team.
Sure.
All right. A little throwback to last offseason for the folks who don't know. All right. Final person on the list, and we'll wrap up the show, Ren. Mr. Kevon Pamphee, offensive guard for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Do we love him or do we leave him?
We love him. He had a disappointing year. I understand. Don't know how much it had to do with rotation. Don't really know how much it has to do with what he's peaked. Maybe this is the best he's going to be. We're talking about unrestricted free agents. He's unrestricted free agent. He can play multiple positions. Apparently that didn't happen where he was supposed to bounce out to right tackle. That never happened. But you can move him around. And I just think, that's a type of player that, and as of now, I think he's the best option starting left guard right now. So you should bring him back, and if he ends up being, a guy that's a 6th or 7th best offensive lineman, so be it. I would like to keep him on the team.
Is this a guy though? So offensive line is not a cheap position especially when you get into that second contract. So we just paid Evan Smith $14.5 million for 4 years of his service. Do we extend Kevin, that sort of similar contract, $14.5 million for the next 4 years to come back and keep playing for the Bucs? Is it that kind of a level?
It's what the market demands is what it is. Now, you look at his last contract, or he got paid last year or this year, however you want to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
He got paid just a hair, tick over $600,000. So basically, roughly, you're adding $3 million to that, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and that seems like a big jump. But I would have to look at the cap to see if it's worth that. But like you said, I mean, if that's what the market demands for that type of player, that's what the market demands for that type of player. Now, I guess the question is, that type of player with your salary cap, do you need him starting at left guard? Or with that type of player, the way your salary cap is structured, that you're okay with him being, like I said, the 6th or 7th at, $3.5 million, sort of like Evan Smith was.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're going to have that room to play with going in the future? Because as we've talked about, ad nauseum, Quan, Allie, Donovan, Mike Evans, Jameis, like all these guys' contracts are coming up, and they're going to be, going to be a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at all this cap room the Bucs have. They're like 5th, 6th. They're in the top 10 about how much cap room they have, but that's going to start to go away quickly in these next couple of years. So, if you're okay with spending Evan Smith type money on him, then yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's better than Evan Smith. He's 4 years younger, and you tie him up now for like a 4-year deal, and you know how the Bucs like to front load it, so it'll only really be probably a 2-year deal, and then they could get out with no penalty. And then you remember every year the salary cap's going to go up a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. So I think it's a guy that we need on the offensive line. So I'm going to go ahead and go, yeah. I guess that's the market value for a second contract for an average guard in the NFL.
I don't know. Those kind of numbers are so hard for me to fathom, but that's not a bad jump. To go from, couple $1 million to making, 14.5, 15.5, whatever. It does seem like that's $15 million for 4 years is really not a lot of money to pay an offensive lineman, especially any player really. But to pay.
That's not a really big second contract.
No, it's not. I mean, that's not I'm getting paid. Pay the man. It's not that kind of a contract.
Well, they are, but
they are
paid as far as NFL numbers go.
Exactly. That's what when these guys dream of the dollars, that's not the dollars they're talking about.
That's the dollars we're talking about.
That's the dollars yes. We would have no problem with that other contract. But I'm with you. It's based on his 2016 performance. They kept telling us that he was our number one choice for a guard or for a tackle, backup at tackle, and for whatever reason that never really seemed to materialize. But was he injured there towards the end of the year?
Was he?
Am I remembering that? I think he might have been one of the ones that got injured. I could be wrong. But for whatever that is, I'd like to see him back in. I'd like to see him more in a full-time role and not a rotational role for sure. But here's the deal. As opposed to who's the other offensive lineman we talked about? Evan Smith.
Right.
No, not Evan Smith. Somebody else. Was it just Evan Smith?
It was.
No, Adam Geddes. We were talking about Adam Geddes earlier.
Oh.
Kevin Pamphile, even if he's not one of the starting 5, absolutely would be one of the 9 to be on the roster.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, he's absolutely worth it. Even if he's not one of those starters, he is certainly, immediate backup talent as well. Put some depth on the line. Because listen, offensive line is one of those spots that is almost guaranteed to have an injury or 2 on it every single year. Yeah, it's very, very rare that your starting offensive line is the same offensive line you have at the end of the year. So, to have him around for that, I'm all for it. I say we love him. Pay the man. What we think is a really large amount of money. So,
It is a really large amount of money.
All right, Ren.
I just want to say something before we move on.
Sure.
All these numbers I've quoted as what they made last year.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking in the wrong column. It's an average what they made through their contract.
Okay.
So Kevin,
Fair
for
enough.
example, Kevon Pamphee actually made $1.8 million last year.
Okay.
But his average for his 4-year contract was 600, just a tick over 600,000. So
Okay.
just in case someone's looking it up and going, what the hell is Ren talking about? What an idiot. I am, because I was looking at the wrong column.
Alrighty then. Well, with that, actually, Ren, that is the last player that we have on our list. So, yeah, I think that's going to wrap it up for this show. If you'd like to get in touch with us about anything that we have talked about, you can always do that on Twitter at ThePewterCast or at Facebook.com/ThePewterCast, or shoot us an email to ThePewterCast@gmail.com. Well, Ren, you got any final thoughts as we're talking about here, these free agents, and where can the fine people out there get a hold of you on the internet?
I feel like I brought just about everybody back, which was I
You
think
left
I did that
Adam
last year
Geddes.
too. We didn't put a lot of people on the bus.
Yeah.
But once again, as you're listening to this, you have to think about it as a 90-man roster.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're going to have 90 guys no matter what. And you can't upgrade everyone significantly everywhere. I think we're pretty much going to hit on most of these. And I think if we don't, it's going to be a Charles Sims situation where somebody just offered him more money somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe like Brent Grimes, they retired.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. That are my final thoughts about this show. You can find me on Twitter at Rendax, REN_DAXT. I'm always down to talk Buccaneers football.
Yeah, and Ren, you mentioned last year that it seemed like we kept just about everybody last year. And to be fair, I remember from last year the Buccaneers did keep just about everybody. There was only a few people that got away. We didn't have a lot of turnover from our 2016 squad to our 2017 squad as far as people going away. So, we'll see what happens this year, how much turnover there will be. That'll certainly be something interesting to watch as the offseason continues to play out. If you guys want to get in touch with me personally, you can find me at Brent Allen Live on Twitter, Facebook, all the social medias out there. So, Ren, that is going to wrap us up for this time. We will be back probably here in about another week with our next off-season tour where we'll do another Buck in the News, kind of review some of the news pieces that have come out over the last couple of weeks. That's going to do it for us with everything here. So we'll close out the show. As always, go Bucs.